Association almost every year. That shows Dr. Abbas has been very active in library communities, as well as in information science side, very theoretical, very also very kind of practical implications over the years. And I'm very, respectful to her and for her achievements for decades. And I remember, I don't know, you remember my participation when you were I believe, at least a dissertation award kind of, committee. You invited me when I was in Milwaukee. I don't know, that's maybe 20 years ago or 15 years ago.
Yeah.
So again, I'm very happy to have Dr. Abbas to lead this, I believe, very important activities among not only our own doctoral students and also including students from Oklahoma. Initially, we had planned to invite the students from the Missouri Library School as well. That was like 3 years ago now, Myra, before the pandemic, and then pandemic hit, and then we just no, and then we kind of revived that effort. So I'm very glad to have this meeting. Welcome. Thank you.
Well, thank you. We're happy that you are able to be with us this morning, Dean Jung, and all of you. Thank you so much for making time to be here. It has been a regular practice in our program, our doctoral program, to offer these kinds of enrichment opportunities for our students. Even when we were meeting face-to-face for class weekends, we had extra opportunities that were offered for people to attend, and we typically have had really good turnouts for them. Today, I think we have a smaller crowd than we sometimes do, but we certainly have a nice group here, I think, for this event. And it is great to have students from both programs together. Dr. Jung has had the good idea that it's important for us to invite students from other locations, but since we haven't been getting together for conferences quite as much as we once did. So I think it's important for our students to know that all of us at all the schools, we're a part of a bigger community that we know as library and information science. And we together work to address important topics and problems in today's society, and hopefully move society forward in their understandings of information and the transfer of information that is involved in ever so many ways. And so today we hope that you'll just join in. Dr. Abbas is going to lead us, and I'm just about to turn it over to her. I hope she'll say things about herself. We've shared her bio and her CV, and so we won't spend our precious time repeating a lot of details that you already have had access to. But as Dean Jung said, we're so proud of her. I am proud of her because she is a graduate of the School of Library and Information Management's master's program. And it's been wonderful over the years, even though we aren't together, to be watching each other's progress from a distance. And so this is a rare and wonderful time for us to actually have her with us today. So June, welcome and enjoy your time here. Now, for the sake of knowing what to do, I'm going to leave it up to you to just manage our group. So when you are ready to take a break, you just say so and we'll follow your lead.
Okay. Well, thank you, Dean Jung and Dr. Dow, for that wonderful introduction. I am so pleased to be here. As Dr. Dow said, we planned this right before the pandemic struck. And we were all excited to be coming. I was going to come to Emporia and spend the weekend and spend some face-to-face time with everybody, and even bring a few of my students along for the ride. And unfortunately, everything got turned upside down, which we all know has had some major impacts and some unexpected challenges and opportunities for us as well. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about that. How our world has changed, how it's changed us as professionals, how it's changed our lives, but also just talk about some opportunities, I think, going forward. And again, it's so nice to see you here. It's great to see all of the SLIM students as well as the SLIS students. Try not to tangle my tongue up too much on those two acronyms. And I have to tell you right away that Dr. Ma, so I'm so happy to see her. She sent me this photo the other day of when she graduated from the master's program in the State University of New York at Buffalo. She was one of my master's students in my first academic position as an assistant and then associate professor. So I am so proud to see Jenny in the audience today, and I've been following her career as well. So goodness, almost full circle here. It's so exciting to be here. So I'm going to share screen with you, and I hope a few more people come because we had more on the, there's another one. We can admit, yay. Okay, so let me share screen. All right, and I know this is kind of an odd title. You should all be seeing my PowerPoint here. Go ahead and start that. There we go. When Dr. Dow asked me to do this presentation for the second time, I started thinking, what in the world can I title this? Before I had a completely different perspective that I was thinking, and with the events of the last couple of years, I've kind of changed. We've all changed, and I've kind of changed of what I wanted to bring to you this morning. So I came up with this title, which is kind of Untitled, Unscripted, Untitled, Academia in a Changing World, because I think it represents not just challenges, but also, and not just uncertainty as might be represented in this title, but also really opportunities, right? And opportunities for growth professionally, personally, academically. And I think that's a message we all need to think very strongly about as we go forward into this changing world. So here's my agenda for today. And I've only have about 14 PowerPoint slides, so I won't bore you with them. In fact, I really don't like creating PowerPoint slides. They never seem to be able to get exactly what I want. So I've settled on this format, this template, and I'll explain a little bit more about that. But what I'd like to do is first have you introduce yourselves to me and to the group, and I want to learn about you and your academic journey. Then I'm going to talk more about why I've titled this presentation as I have, and then I think we'll take a break. Then we'll come back and talk about challenges and opportunities, and depending on if we need another break, we'll take one there, or we can wait till after drawing inspiration, and then we'll have a wrap up at the end of the session. So what I think that'll work for an agenda. Does that sound good to Dr. Dow, to Dean Young? Okay. All right. So as I said in my prompt to you all in the email, I wanted you to be prepared to introduce yourselves today. And I think it's really important that we get to know each other, and I want to hear more about you and your research interests, or if you're at the dissertation stage, I'd love to hear about your dissertation topic, and then the type of position that you plan to pursue. But you can tell us anything you would like us to know about you. So I'm wondering, I'm going to stop sharing screen here. so we can see each other better. There, I like that better. And we'll go back into that later. So I'm going to do what's called popcorning. I'm going to have, I'll pick somebody to start, and then they get to popcorn to whoever they want to go next. Have you all heard that term? It's a Zoom term. That and Zoom hair that we're all getting by wearing these things on our heads. Some new phenomena we're dealing with. My hairdresser and I were discussing Zoom hair last week. It's like, my hair is naturally curly and I cut it very short because of the pandemic and not wanting to fuss around with it. But it has a very distinctive section here that the curl won't go any other way because I have this headset on my head about 8 hours of every day. So it's another new phenomenon we're all dealing with. So I'm going to start by popcorning over to Liz, and she can start our conversation.
All right. Good morning. I am Liz. I'm Elizabeth Ferguson. I am a school librarian in Kansas City, and I'm also getting ready to defend my dissertation this Tuesday. So it's a very exciting week for me. And my research interest, my cat is about to jump into my lap, so apologies if I'm distracted, is that I'm studying the critical literacy of digital readers who are lurkers, specifically lurkers. And in particular, I'm studying how paratext tools facilitate knowledge creation and acculturation of fan readers who are users of the website, the Archive of Our Own, mostly in response to my own experience having a lot of patrons who kind of rejected a lot of the formal, the texts that we had acquired for our library, and instead reading all of this self-published stuff online. That was kind of what drew my interest to the topic. So looking at their information behavior, their critical literacy.
And Liz, what type of an academic position or what type of a position do you hope for in the future?
I had thought that I would want to pursue a teaching position at the post-secondary level, but to be completely honest, I'm not sure if it's a very realistic goal in the contemporary world that we're living in, especially since I'm pretty geographically locked down to the Midwest because of family commitments. So I'm probably going to stick with what I'm doing and just be overly educated. That's kind of, that's, I don't want to sound depressed, bring down the mood or anything, but that's sort of where we are right now. So that's me.
Well, and I think that's a fair reality choice, right, at this point, and you just never know what's going to happen next, especially as you start, once you finish your dissertation, you start presenting it in different circles and opportunities may arise that you had not thought about previously, or there may be other ways in which you can join, a post-secondary education world rather than what you're thinking right now. So that's exciting. Thank you for introducing us. Your topic sounds absolutely fascinating to me as someone who studies digital youth. So I would love to hear more about it. So the popcorn is to you.
All right, I'm going to popcorn to Ting.
Hi everyone, my name is Ting Wang. I just defended my dissertation yesterday, and
Yay!
My dissertation topic is about the healthcare information use in the for the family caregivers of individuals with rare disease in the social media groups. And I investigated the types of the healthcare information disseminated by the hospitals to the family caregivers and what kind of information they need. And also the relationships between their demographics, between the demographics and their information satisfaction. And the results that indicates most hospitals did not provide them with sufficient healthcare information, and the diagnosis is very critical for acquiring the healthcare information. And in the future, I want to acquire faculty position probably, but I'm not confident for that.
You're not confident for that? For
No.
a faculty position?
No, not yet.
Okay, well, we'll talk some more about that throughout the presentations today. So I'm really happy to hear that you defended your dissertation yesterday and you're still smiling. So I'm assuming everything went really well.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice that you might give to those that are going to defend soon or in the future? Probably too soon after to have really reflected on it yet.
I don't know.
That's okay. I don't mean to put you on the spot. If you think of something later as we continue the conversation today, I know there are people in this audience, I know my students in particular are probably sitting there, okay, give us some good tips because we're getting in that direction.
Can I popcorn anyone?
You can. Mhm.
I want to hear from Pan Xue.
Hi everyone, I am Xu Pan. I come from China and it is my second year of PhD program and I'm interested in health information seeking and I want to find a job in academic. That's all. Also, I come from OU and I'm really happy to participate today. And well, maybe I will pick up Moses. Can you introduce, okay.
So before you start, Moses, I think you should all know how dedicated Xu is. She was attending classes from China during the pandemic, and she would get up at like 4 o'clock in the morning to join our 3:30 afternoon class. So we were just so happy to have her join us, but she was so dedicated to getting her doctorate that she would go to those extra steps.
Yes, last year I took online course in China and it is terrible because I had to stay up very late at midnight and luckily I arrived in Norman this year, so I'm really happy to be here.
Just one of those additional challenges. Okay, new popcorn to Moses.
Yes.
All right, good morning, everyone. I'm Moses Munyao. I was born and raised in Kenya. I came to the US in 2018, and I was in the first class of the PhD program at OU. So I just finished my oral part of the general exam yesterday. So I'm heading towards the dissertation phase right now. My research interests are in school librarianship, specifically on issues related with policy. And after the completion of my PhD, I'm looking towards heading the faculty direction. I've worked for a number of years in the library, so I want to shift my focus to and see what the faculty life has to offer for me. I know Swan is waiting for me to pick her, but I'm gonna pick Stan.
All right, thank you, Moses, and good morning, everyone. It's so great to be part of this symposium. And so my name is Stan Trembach. I am currently an assistant professor at the School of Library and Information Management at Emporia State. And I've had the pleasure of holding this position for nearly 2 years. And prior to that, my academic journey is quite long and convoluted because prior to joining SLIM, I was one of those folks in the trenches, as we call it, not to use a war metaphor right now. And that experience, being part of the academe, but kind of being more in the service and support role, very much informs my current research and teaching interests, which are essentially, if you can boil it down to one term, I would say it would be how contemporary libraries can promote and ensure equitable access to information, both in terms of literacy initiatives they institute, particularly to underserved populations, as we call them, culturally diverse populations or marginalized populations in any other way, whatever the reason for marginalization may be. So informational management and also library leadership, adaptive leadership, which we so much need at this day and age. And here at SLIM, I teach a wide range of classes, ranging from library management per se to research methods. And also I have recently designed and offered a couple of summer electives in library assessment and information ethics and policy. So this is, in a nutshell, all I wanted to share about myself. And so if I could pick on anyone here, I would say Juliana. And I'm sorry, I can't quite pronounce your last name correctly. I don't think so. I would not even venture in this direction.
Juliana is just fine. I'm Juliana Nicolasian. I'm a PhD student at SLIM. Hopefully I will defend, definitely I will defend in the fall. My dissertation research looks at job crafting and work engagement among academic librarians. I am currently the head of digital resources and discovery services at Oklahoma State University. I love this job, but it's the most difficult work I've ever done in my life. And I want to keep doing this job probably for a while, but maybe way down the road, I would look at associate dean or dean positions within academic libraries.
So Juliana, what was your dissertation topic again? You said job crafting?
Job crafting and work engagement. Mm-hmm.
Can you explain what job crafting is?
Job crafting is how individuals on the job make choices to change or alter their work life in absence of supervisors. So it's a really interesting take. I think on some levels as librarians, we are job crafters, but in some cases, no. My data was collected about a year ago. So it was at a time during the pandemic when we started to see a return to libraries. And it's just a really interesting set of data, because you could just see the transition and the the up in the air feeling, which we're still in the middle of too right now.
That is a term I don't think I've heard before. So that's really, thank you for introducing that to me. Excuse me. The other thing I'm curious is, because your data was gathered right in the beginning or middle of the pandemic, it'll be interesting to see how that might shift in the future if you continue to explore that as, a research topic after you finish. That's really interesting. And I know Sue-Ann is really, that piqued her interest. I could see that when you're talking about what job crafting is. Thank you for sharing that. And you get to popcorn to the next person.
Oh, why not, Dr. Wittersheim?
I knew that was coming. Thanks so much. Hi, June. Hi, everyone. My name is Michael Wittersheim. I'm an assistant professor in the department. I do work with the PhD program. I taught a couple courses there. I'm currently working with Juliana and Liz. I'm on their committees. And I just went to Ting's defense yesterday, and it was amazing. So I teach in the master's program. I teach organization of information, research methods. I'm also coordinating all the school library stuff, our licensure program. So that's kind of how I fit in. but yeah, I'm excited to be here and to hear about everyone's work. So thank you.
What type of research do you do, Michael?
Oh yeah, funny you should say that, because it's I graduated back from the University of Pittsburgh in 2017, and I am still working on my dissertation, believe it or not, making it into a book project. So maybe, I don't know if that's a lesson for people to, choose something that you're going to be working on for a while. But yeah, I'm still very much in that area, and the research was on public libraries, the public sphere, developing new models for describing that, the system, just developing a new theory to explain why things develop as they do over time. I think it's important to really consider, when you're working on your project, what is it that you are creating? What type of knowledge is it? Because there are, very different types of knowledge. Some is descriptive, some is explanatory, some is how to do things like strategies. And each of these types of knowledge really has its own way of being created. So, I mean, we can talk more about that, but that's what I teach in my my research methods course, because when you're developing your research questions and your problem, and you're stating your purpose at the beginning, you have to have some kind of end goal in mind, right? And that end goal is what that knowledge is going to be. And you have to, in some sense, fulfill that promise by the end of your study. And it's fine to encounter new questions and new ideas, new possible directions. And that's great, but you still always have to follow through on what type of knowledge it is that you said you were going to create at the beginning. So I think that has helped me always keep things in line without, not getting distracted, not getting off course. Anyway, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question?
It does
Okay.
answer my question.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. And it tells us a little bit more about you as well. I also teach information organization courses. And so that, of course, my ears peaked up right away. And that's something that's a huge challenge, right? As it continues to change. And I'm sure you have integrated your perspective on knowledge creation into the course as well, because we're now creating knowledge in various different forms, and we're having to organize it in these new forms that we haven't done in the past. So your research sounds really interesting. I look forward to reading more about it.
Oh, thank you. Can I just say, I think for the organization class, one of the challenges is some of the students, they really want to do the technical stuff, but it's organization is not that class. It's not a cataloging class. It's more of a, let's think about this more abstractly type of class. But having students imagine what it might be like to do something differently, that's always, for me, the challenge, because I want them to go out and not just do things the way that they're told to do it, but like to think, what if we could do things some other way? What are the other possibilities for organizing? So like, even for the semantic web, linked data, those are still new things in a way. Like, yes, we have them, they're there, but how could you use those to their full capability, I guess. I don't know about you with your students, but that, for me, that's what challenges me teaching that class.
I think that's very similar to my challenge as well. Part of it is I take a user-centered design approach in the course and teach students how to design systems based on who their users are. So they create an information organization system by the end of the semester that is designed around users. So they are creating a new way of thinking about how you might organize knowledge, information objects. Part of the challenge, of course, in any teaching, regardless of which course, is trying to determine what to to include in a course, but also what to exclude from a course. And that course is, Moses and I struggle with that all the time. Moses is my GA for that course. And as things change in the world and there are new things that need to be considered for information organization, we have to decide, well, what can we leave out so we can bring in something new to this course? So it's a constant conversation between Moses and I and our students about what they're learning and how they're learning, but also thinking about what they need to learn to be professionals in this area. So it's definitely a course I think that everybody should teach at some point in their career, because I still feel it's kind of the bedrock of all librarianship is understanding how we organize information to provide access. But it's, and it's connected to information retrieval, it's connected to information behavior, and I try to make those connections for the students in the class as well. So we could talk about this all day, Michael. So I'm going to let you popcorn on to the next person.
Okay, sure. Let's see here. Who's left here? Suzanne, did you go? No, do you want to go? Okay.
Thanks. I'm Sue Ann Weimer, and I'm with the OU program. I work for a public library system in Tulsa, the Tulsa City County Library, and for 30 years. So I'm an older student in the doctoral program at OU. Because I've worked in public libraries for so long, and I started as a research librarian, I helped develop our IT department. I was a deputy director for a while, and I currently manage our youth services department for the system. So I'm very based in practical, like how do we make things work? And one of the areas that I've always been a little bit interested in, and so it's going to be my dissertation focus, is outcome-based planning and development and evaluation of programs in public libraries. So we, just our library system alone, pre-pandemic and virtual, hundreds and hundreds of programs, every year. And that's, similar for public libraries across the country, across the world. We all do a lot of programming. How are we planning for those? How are we developing? Are they based? What are outcomes? Are we actually thinking those through? And then are we evaluating them? And it's a question because even at TCCL, for some of our programs, we do that. And since I started managing the services department, we really have focused on making sure our programs have outcomes, that we are doing some planning, that we're letting things go. Evaluation is, well, the staff like doing this, but as Dr. Abbas said, what's the user base? What do the users really need? And one thing I'm really trying to get across in not only my staff in my department, but others in the system surreptitiously, don't just decide to do a program based on what you think would be great. How do you know what the users want? Make sure we're doing that planning and make sure we have some outcomes. So my dissertation is probably going to focus on the Southwest region, public libraries in the Southwest region. We'll see, the nation is a little too large maybe because there are thousands of public libraries. But anyway, that's me. And I am a year from where Moses is right now of written and oral exams. And I will pass it to Young Ah.
Thank you, Sue Ann. Hi, everyone. It's really nice to see you all. My name is Young-Ah Lee, and I'm from South Korea. And this is my third year of a PhD program at OU. I passed the general exam last semester, and I'm preparing for the proposal for the dissertation. My research interest is older adults' technology use. I originally wanted to study them in public library settings, but because of COVID closure, public libraries are not available for some people. So I plan to research in assistive center or nursing home.
It's great to see you again, Young Ah. I haven't seen you in a while. Are you back in Korea now?
No, no, I'm staying at Norman, in Norman
You're
now.
still in Norman.
Yeah,
Excellent.
Mhm.
That's really great to hear. And so tell us, what is your plan after you finish your dissertation?
Well, I'm not sure either. So we'll see.
Okay. And who would you like to popcorn to?
I think Jinshuan Ma, is that right? To
Yes.
pronounce it?
Yes. Yeah. Thank you, everybody. I'm so happy to be here today. I think I've been waiting for at least 3 years, right? Even today, we have a very small group because several faculty are teaching this weekend, and also a lot of people have the other engagement. But I'm very glad to be here, and we have a very good representations. And so far, we have a well-rounded discussion. It's very exciting. I really interesting to hear people from the different paths and different learning goal and the different career goals as well. For me, I took a very different and interesting path for my academic career. By the way, it's my seventh year here. I'm current associate professor, and I think I start the other day. I talked my for the webinar, talk about my path for the how to get here, and also my research interest in health information focused. I have my undergraduate and master degree in China, and my undergraduate degree is in archives and minor in computer science. And because both I grew up in a medical family, both my parents are physicians, and also my other family member all work in the healthcare. But I refused to go to medical school, but I end up working in medical school, and the same school my parents work, and they're working the university hospital and the university professor. So I work in the medical library, and so I have to take a lot of the medical class for 3 years. And after 14 years, I work in that medical university, and I left my job in 2004. At that time, I was an executive director of 2 large medical libraries. We have 17 librarians. So that's why I came to University of Buffalo, and Dr. Abbas actually was my academic advisor. I still remember every time I walk into her office, she always very generous, provide her time and advice. And I think my experience with her class, it was digital library. And I was really impressed by her teaching style and how to her recognize the class. We did a project, actually a real life project about the Buffalo firefighter digitalization for the museum. We divide the class in groups. We have a different goal. And we said at the beginning, I think I was in the metadata group. We have to go to drive to the museum. It's a very smaller downtown museums. And we have digitized everything and organize the metadata. I remember after the whole class, the final day for the final course presentation, actually we present just like a party, and we present our product. We create the whole website and digital collections for the museum. That's a really, really amazing project. And a lot of things will stick with me. And I think that gave me a lot of the idea how to teach, effective teaching, how to do the community engage teaching, how to engage a student. and how to collaborate with each other. And I think that have a profound impact on my career. And then after graduate from UB, and I went to Florida State. It's also it's long journey. It's not very easy, I think, for I'm also older. I started my PhD at my 40. And I also have a daughter I took with me. I started my doctor program. My daughter started her high school. She gave me a hard time at that time. Only two of us in America. I struggled a lot. During her 4-year high school, I didn't travel to any academic conferences. It's really affect my work. But I think the persistence is very important. It's not easy for the doctor program for me. Also, I have to overcome the language barrier. And I also have a different, lot of strugglings, personal struggling and academic struggling. But I think you have to determine, have your commitment, and proactive, I think is very important. I have so many professors that really push me hard and collaborate with me for the interdisciplinary research. I think also broaden my research area. I really engage a lot of the professor teaching in the health informatics. They did a lot of the very interesting project at that time. And I also closely work with a lot of the health science researchers, medical professors. And after I finished my doctor program, I also stayed for 1 more year at the Florida State. I did a postdoc. I have a dual appointment. One is a College of Medicine. So I closely with my outside doctor committee member, Dr. Glukov. He is the top researcher in the dementia caregiver, depression intervention. He has so many NIH grants. So I really learned a lot from him and his team, and how to manage a large grant, how to really do research, really affect people's life. We went to the North Florida, and a lot of the African-American family, they have the dementia family members. All the caregiver, how to help them and do self-care. And they hire a lot of the counselor by phone, because there are a lot of caregivers live a rural area. They couldn't go out, and they schedule the counseling by phone. And for 6 months, how to really help them manage the depression, all the difficulties for caregiving, how to help them to set up all the different stage through the progression for the patients, for the dementia patients, is very challenging. I think that I learned a lot. Any research not really just get published, get a grant. You can really change people's life. I work with a lot of the research participants, and I did an interview. I visit them, and we have some together gathering events. It's really encouraged me to do some meaningful research. And I also have another postdoc appointment is Information Institute. It's a very famous, I think, Dr. McClure and started Oklahoma. His career, I think, Chuck is started Oklahoma, and he went to Syracuse, and then he ended up in the Florida State, and he built the Information Institute for focus on the library assessment and evaluation, and he has an IS grant, several grants actually, and I was hired by him as a research collaborator. We did a lot of the STEM education in across the Florida, start middle school and high school and undergraduate, different community college, different college, how to really evaluate different STEM related the courses. I think I learned a lot. I went to a lot of the job fair. I work with a lot of the IT employer and did the interview with them. I travel a lot, actually. I really enjoy that kind of time. My point here is be open-minded. For current environment, sometimes you don't really know what's the job market. You just open all the opportunities, be proactive, and to learn different things. I think that's always beneficial. I think I'm very grateful for all the opportunities open for me, and all the mentor, all the people help me and mentor me. I really appreciate. When I start landing this job, I was assigned as a nursing informatics. It's a new 2-year master program, and we collaborate with business school at ESU. I was the only one, and I have some training and experience for this area, but I have to develop every courses by myself. And I don't have a lot of support from the resources in the library. And I have to navigate everything on my own. I remember I talked to so many colleagues and previous professors, and every different library school and nursing school, they provide the similar courses. I just ask everything, ask their suggestions, how to create a curriculum. I took several online courses by myself. I went to the Summer Institute for the University of Maryland Nursing School. I just learned everything on the spot, I think. I use a lot of my family member, my daughter's library resources. It's not, because I do have a lot of access here. So I just borrow my friends from Florida. Yeah, I think at least we finished several the programming. A lot of students end up went to the PhD program for the nursing informatics, and several people get the certificate and landing the job after graduate. I was very happy. During that time, I took the student to the Cerner, their big EHR vendor, the conferences, and work very closely with them. For the library classes, I teach reference class, research method, and intro informatics, information retrieval, several and what's called information resources for diverse population, and several health related courses. And I try to integrate my research with my teaching, because I focus on the health information, and I work with Dr. Burdell and proposed the health information professional concentration and the certificate. That's solely based on my personal research interest, my background, and my research. I conducted 2 phases of research about the role of a health information professional, the emerging role, and published in the Medical Library Association Journal, and selected as the credit hour, the continued learning hour for the health science librarian. And I create a second phase for the model, how to really create the health information curriculum for entry-level library school student. I based on my research finding, and I proposed the health information professional concentration and the certificate for this class. I tried to get MS grant twice. I didn't get it, I failed. But I will continue to work on this area. And another research area, I also focus on the anti-vaccination on the social media group. I started 2006. I think it's really interesting topic for me because at that time I focused on the childhood vaccination. I published the LSR in 2007 with my GA, the master student. I continue on this topic even for the current COVID. I collaborate with Dr. Lori Benici. We published one article. I'm still working on the several about the use of social media analysis on the anti-vaccination group. Right now, it's not only the it's just a very open-ended group because the Facebook, the restriction for the anti-vaccination group, they change the different format, they change a different approach on this very topic. It's more interesting, fascinating, and very rich data. I think it's always interests me. For the other things, I have been talked too much. I'm just very excited to collaborate with other students. I think I've worked with several master students and also doctor students on my research here. I really enjoy, gave them experience. I also learned from them. We took different skills, different things to the table. I think it's really help them to explore the research academic area. Even they went to the library, they really help them employ above for themselves, have that exposure. I remember I was a reference to several people work with me for the master student. They always interested in their research skills. What's their contribution? What's their engagement? How they learned? I think that's very beneficial experience for students and for me as well. I think I will stop myself here.
Okay, thank you, Jenny. What wonderful experiences you have had, and you have shared so many great insights with the students. You know, postdoc is a career path that obviously you could take. It's not one that's that often taken in our field. Usually, you know, if you're going into a faculty position, you go right into a faculty position. So it's exciting, but other fields almost expect a postdoc. So that's another avenue that people could consider. I also like that you brought in your rich research experience and how you have integrated your research and teaching together, and the development of the program that you nursing informatics program that you've created just sounds wonderful and very unique. I mean, are there other schools that have that type of program, other LAS schools? Because I'm not familiar with any.
I don't think so.
That's exciting because that brings, you know, the spotlight to ESU even more and to SLIM. And I thank you for also mentioning about collaborating with your master's and your doctoral students, because that's really the best experience for them to learn about the research process. And one thing I'm going to say is that you reminded me about the Firebrary, which is what we called our digital library of the Buffalo Firefighters Museum. Buffalo has a rich history, and their Firefighters Museum reflects that. And they have materials in all different formats, but I remember the leather fire buckets as one of the items that we photographed and put into the digital library. It was a fascinating little library or little museum, which is still there if you want to visit. Unfortunately, the Firebrary is no longer online, but I've collaborated with small cultural heritage organizations on, I think, 11 different projects like that, in which we as a team, taking a project management approach, actually developed digital libraries. So it's exciting and it's a great way to teach. It's a lot of fun, and it helps students develop skills that they really hadn't expected they would. So thank you for that. Jenny, who are you popcorning to?
One thing I want to mention here, since we have several international students here, when you're on the job market, I think the biggest thing, based on my personal experience, is you have to rely on your work visa. Not everyone can or want to sponsor you. I think it's more difficult, more struggling, more than a lot of the American students. They couldn't understand that kind of the struggling, especially during different economic situations that can be, but just open to all the opportunities, you will get there. I'm probably pick who will I pick?
Say Dr. Dao and
Dr.
Dr.
Dao?
Young are the.
Okay, I probably pick Dean Zhang.
Okay. Well, first of all, it's just kind of clarification about the nursing informatics. That's an unfortunate situation. And it was before my time. So, and again, unfortunately, I had to close the program. It was so disarrayed. And then we had to teach them out through the other nursing program, the Overland Park, the Mid-American Nazarene University has a little bit similar programs, and we had to teach them out for the remaining students. So that's kind of passed behind us. So, well, I mean, like Jenny, and we call Jenny, Dr. Ma here. It's a long journey from, for me from Korea. I mean, Young I is from Korea too. And so I got two, the bachelor's and then master's in political science, particularly the diplomacy, international relations. So my kind of dream was to become a ambassador to China, So, but when I did my thesis, the master's thesis, I was so disappointed with the contemporary library systems in Korea. The access, kind of availability of the resources is all kind of totally didn't make sense to me at all. As like a 24, 25-year-old young, college student, it didn't make sense to me. So abruptly, I changed course. I declared to my parents, okay, I'm going to change the libraries in Korea by studying in the US. So I didn't know anything about it. And so I applied actually Columbia University Library School. That was 94, 93, and it had been already closed down. I didn't know, but there was a old, like a TOEFL or whatever GRE kind of the introductory kind of manuals at a center, and I took it, and then I sent all to my application to all the top 20 schools, and then Columbia, I thought it was there, but it's gone already. Anyway, so I came to the North Carolina, Chapel Hill in 1995, with the dream of changing libraries, right? But 95, if you remember, that was the year of the internet kind of birth, kind of to the public is kind of slowly kind of opening. Okay, this is the new to me. Okay, what is it? And then I kind of jump on it. But I was still fascinated with all the cataloging tools, OCLC kind of special kind of thing for the East Asian kind of materials. We call CJK plus. So I was a GA at the library. So I did my the master's thesis with that special cataloging tool about 3 languages: Chinese, Japanese, Korean. But unfortunately, June or Myra, the Jerry Saye in the information organization, he was my dissertation, the thesis advisor, but he denied my application for the doctoral program, citing he had already 4 doctoral students, supervisees, so I cannot take anymore. Also, the famous Dr. Chapman, was there at the time. She said nobody else kind of, wanted you. So, and then I scrambled to apply. So back to the Dr. Abbas's kind of first mention at the beginning of this meeting, you never know, just be open. So I applied to Florida State, and I kind of accepted, and I moved there. Surprisingly, at the first week of the kind of introductory class, he would be my committee advisor, the dissertation committee, the chair, Dr. Mike Gluck. First week, for somehow I actually gave him as an introduction my thesis copy. And then a week later, he told me, oh, this is publishable. So then I submitted the thesis to the LISR. That's probably top 5 journals in our field. So I submitted and then got accepted with a very minor revision. So 97, I got published. I got a publication. That was my kind of up, kind of down and up moment. So, and then after 4 years, I got, PhD, and OU has a kind of, relationship to me. So when I kind of close to finishing my dissertation, I applied for a job at OU. And I was waiting about 2 weeks. And then Milwaukee program kind of announced the position. And I applied, and I got an interview on campus very easily, because at the time I was in Chicago for the CJK conference. So I got the interview in the cold March day. So cold. I was in Florida, right? And the Milwaukee weather is crazy. But the dean, Dean Aman, gave me 48 hours, take or leave, job offer. Within 48 hours, I had to answer, go or not. And then I was waiting for the Oklahoma's call. And I asked my advisor what to do. I honestly, I never actually got interested in Milwaukee program at all. But I knew OU, and the campus is quite different, because Milwaukee is an urban setting. It's about 4 buildings, a high tower, that's it. Oklahoma is kind of, as you see the June's background, it's beautiful. So, but I was kind of, and then my advisor told me, okay, take what you have on your hands. And then it came to me, oh, so, okay. Then I took the Milwaukee job, and I never heard from Oklahoma. So at the time, then, no, but it's kind of circling back, as you said earlier. And then Danny Wallace was there. And then quickly after he moved to the Alabama. So I kind of, assumed there was something going on. Anyway, I spent 15 years at Milwaukee program. And then last 3 years, it was I was the interim dean of the school. It's a big school, about 25 tenure line faculty positions. That's a big school, but it was unexpected. I was 11th year or 12th year, I think 11th year associate professor. Okay, I just got tenure 2007, and then 3 years probably associate professor. So I was not ready for that big title or the duty at all. But the problem is, I think it's happening still now in many academic settings. The full professors do not want to step up, because partly because that's different kind of skill sets, and also different kind of tasks. Often it's a lot of complaints all the time, and then limited resources. You have to decide all the time. So nobody actually stepped up, and we were about to hire somebody else in other units, and people did not want that either. So then, other people, not full professors, but other junior members just nudged me, okay, you do it, you do it. So I did it. So without knowing what it is, the interim deanship, without knowing what it is. So, but I did not regret. For somehow I spent 27 months as an interim dean. It's supposed to be like a 6 months usually, but we failed kind of a first search, and then second search. It was a drama there. So we hired somebody. We had a signed contract, but the person didn't come, demanding a lot of other things. So second search failed, and then we finally we had somebody. So after 27 months, I moved on as again the associate professor, and then this job, the Emporia job, opened, and I applied. So again, you never know what would happen. So open mind. So it's timing too. So we have 2 openings, okay, 2 tenure line faculty positions at SLIM. But I don't think any of you, the OU students, finishing next year, close. So again, it's timing. We need you, but you're not there yet. So, but who knows? Other library schools may have openings the following year, or we, I don't want, but we may fail again the search. So you can have apply. So again, it's possibilities out there. Some programs is fully online, and then requires no residence at all, like a San Jose State Library School. Their faculty members are all over the places. So place bound, that Lee's kind of mentioned, place bound, right? No, just apply, and then be flexible. Well, kind of jokingly, when I kind of was on the market, some library school kind of heads approached me. What is your interest? Well, the human computer interaction, other areas, and they, okay, blah blah. After like 20 minutes later, always they asked me, can you teach cataloging? I had no experience, and I was not interested in cataloging, but always they ask, oh, can you teach cataloging? Can you teach the IO area? So be prepared, in that sense. If you are actually experienced in that area and willing to, then why not? Okay. So So again, my research, my dissertation was about the vibrating mouse. This is not vibrating, but for the gaming purposes, the mouse is vibrating. It's called force feedback. So I applied that to coloring map, different colors, different vibrations. So without color, if they identify the different forces, different values, of course they could because it's hierarchical. But I kind of applied that technology to that interface. So that was my dissertation 2001. But interestingly, I don't have TV, kind of cable TV, but I kind of watch the YouTube time to time. There is a commercial from Cox kind of internet company. It's a Hug Plus the project. So wear a kind of a special vest, and then remotely you can kind of hug and feel the other side. That's exactly what I was doing with my dissertation. So I was kind of happy to see that commercial. Okay, that's kind of came into reality, touchable interface in a kind of situation, kind of emotions attached. So it's kind of commercial success. So I'm still kind of proud of my dissertation, but if you see my CV, I jump around here and there in a kind of cynical kind of way. For example, one of my pieces is, okay, tagging is not effective. Tagging is not useful. I mean, I don't know, you kind of had the tagging, that research, metadata research in your kind of doctoral studies. To me, tagging didn't make sense at all from the beginning, still now. So I kind of try to prove it's redundant, too much redundant with other metadata fields like a title, a description. So that kind of research I have done. And then recently, somebody at the Cambridge University Library in Britain approached me, okay, can we collaborate based on your previous research? So it's very simple application. There's the visualization tool. It's available free. And then I dumped the book cover images of bestsellers in each country, about 10 countries, from Amazon bookstores, bestsellers in each country, and then dump the images and then run the visualization, and clearly showed the kind of cultural difference. Asian countries kind of liked kind of bright and then light colored the covers. For somehow like a French, the Mexican and other kind of Western side is kind of dark and very deep, saturated color scheme. So I did that about 5 years ago, and somebody came to me last year with Cambridge collection. So I did that this year. So it will be out very soon. So again, I have very diverse topics of research areas, and also my journey, is very diverse. And big disclaimer: I never worked in any position as a full-timer until my Milwaukee faculty job. So I always study. And then I had never worked in libraries as a full-timer, except for 2 years of GA-ship at the UNC Chapel Hill. But again, you never know. Now I'm the interim dean of the libraries here. So, it's again, it's circling back from your kind of initial ideas. remember my goal was, half accomplished. My goal was to change libraries in Korea. So.
Well, congratulations on your interim position as the interim dean of the libraries. And I think you'll bring a lot of that experience back to the SLIM program, right? And because it's, as we all know, being in practice is very different than being in a teaching position. And you bring so much of that previous experience into everything that you do as an instructor. So Dr. Dow, I think you are last presenter for right now.
Well, thank you. I'm happy to be. And this is such a good time that we're having. I love listening to all of you. And like June, I really believe this is an important part of the learning process at this point in your academic journey. I'm going to be quick, June. How are we doing on time?
We're doing okay.
Okay, I'll be quick though. I want to tell you, first of all, how much we appreciate having Dean Jung at SLIM. We're so grateful for the expertise and goodwill that he brings. And it's no wonder to me that when the library needed a interim dean, that they looked to him to do it. I'll have to say, I don't like to share him all that much, but I think of all the options that, and there's relatively few options at this point at the university. There's a high need for him to be there, and I'm really glad that he's there. And I know that we're all in good hands with him in these leadership roles. So, just a little bit about me. I'm for the most part, the most important thing that I have to do is to be sure that I do whatever I can do to enable our doctoral students and our faculty to be successful. And so I'm always looking out for them. I think they know that. It's not probably always that obvious, but I try really hard to see that they have what they need to be moving forward and overcoming lots of challenges and opportunities, particularly in this environment that we've been in. But I'm educated as a teacher and as a librarian, and I came to the School of Library and Information Management as a doctoral student. I think it was in 1995. And the way that happened was I had presented at a conference in Phoenix, and it was a conference that was focused on intellectual disabilities. And that was the topic that I spoke about. And I shared, the presentation had to do with cognitive disabilities and a particular strategy for improving learning. And my work was based on the work that was going on at the University of North Carolina at Division Teach, which that's an acronym. And the head of that program was Dr. Gary Mezabov, and he was the person that I had collaborated with. And so I presented on Friday, I traveled back home on Saturday, and early Sunday morning, the telephone rang. I'm going to say it was maybe around 7 o'clock. And I jumped up and answered the phone. You know, that was still in the days where we had phones ringing and they were just located in one place in the house. So I had to run and get it, and I got it just in time. And the person on the other end introduced herself, and she said, "Good morning, I'm Dr. Ann Turnbull from the University of Kansas. And I was in your audience last Friday in Phoenix. And I'd like to meet you, and I would like to know, what is it that you're planning to do with the rest of your life? Because I would like to invite you to apply for one of 4 positions in a new group of doctoral students at the University of Kansas and in a program called Family Studies and Disabilities." And so I'm still almost half asleep as I'm hearing your talk, and I'm sure I must not have sounded very with it on the other end. But I said, well, for heaven's sakes, my goodness, I'm so surprised, and I'm happy to hear about it, but I'll need some more time to find out about it. That's just kind of how I could talk about it at that moment. And she said, oh, of course. Well, I've called you now because I know you're a busy person, and I didn't want to run the risk of not catching up with you right away. And so let's get together and talk. Well, as it turned out, I was admitted to that program. It had a huge federal grant supporting the program, and it has for several decades. It continues today. And she invited me not only to take courses and to work with her as her graduate assistant, but also to be directly involved in a project that had to do with dissemination of information. And as you probably know, the U.S. Department of Education has historically funded big grants that is devoted to dissemination of information. So while we think that concept is really unique to us, it's really a bigger concept than our field. It's a very big idea in the Department of Education. And so I had already decided on my own that I was really intellectually more interested in what is information and how does it move through society than I was interested in and how do people learn and how do we assess people's learning in traditional ways. And so that was really interesting to me to be able to work on that kind of a project. And I did that for 3 or 4 semesters, and it was what I learned about it is they really had the right idea about needing to disseminate information, but they didn't have a very good way of understanding what that really meant. And in those days, they had the problem was that faculty researchers all across the country, including at the University of Kansas and everywhere else, they had paper copies of their work in file cabinets, and they, for the most part, kept it to themselves and used it as they taught their own classes, but that didn't go out in the world to the people that it could really best serve. And I knew that, and they knew that. I learned through a contact from a faculty member at the university, at Emporia State University, that they were starting a new doctoral program. And Dr. Hill said, we'd like for you to talk to us about it. And so I did contact her and talk to her about it. And I figured out this is really what I'm more interested in. The interesting thing about what this story I've just told you is, what I didn't know at the time is that Dr. Gary Mezebov and Dr. Ann Turnbull had been colleagues, co-researchers at the University of North Carolina. And they both had their hearts and their head in the same place, but they kind of had a different political agenda, and they had kind of moved apart like this in a certain way. And lo and behold, I know that Ann Turnbull wanted to get me away from Gary Mezebov. And so she was that was probably at the core of why she called me on Sunday morning at 7 o'clock in the morning to ask me what I'm planning to do with the rest of my life. So making a long story short, here I am, and I've been teaching at the School of Library and Information Management for a little over 20 years now. And I've taught a lot of different courses, but for the most part, my focus is in information transfer and also in information behavior. So for example, this semester, I'm teaching 2 sections of information seeking behavior and reference services. And this summer, I'll be teaching community analysis, and then the course we call instructional librarianship. An example of a recent project that I've worked on is we at SLIM were fortunate to get $500,000 from IMLS to offer a certificate we called Information Technology and Scientific Literacy. And I collaborated with a professor of physical sciences at Emporia State we developed a new curriculum, first looking at the core competencies in math, science, math and science and social studies, I believe it was, looking for the thread of information literacy skills that our content teachers are expected to teach. And we wrote a new curriculum based on that. And then we taught teachers and school librarians in the same courses. And the two of us co-taught all of those 12 credit hours. And we were able, through that grant, all the money went primarily to scholarships for our students. And I think we had 64 completers of that degree. Now, one of the problems, as Dean Jung well knows, is that the curriculum and the idea of the certificate is very popular. People really want it. One of the challenges about continuing it is how can we make that level of collaboration happen at the university? And so without that grant project, it's almost been impossible to make it happen. And while it's really on the front edge of what education and librarianship is all about, I think the university infrastructure has practically brought it to a halt. And so that's very disappointing. Although we learned a lot, I certainly learned a lot through that process. And I know that what I learned continues to influence my teaching and my interactions as a member of the SLIM faculty. Also, most recently, I worked with a doctoral student and one of our junior faculty members to look at the issue of people with intellectual disabilities coming to college. And so one of the things that is causing that to happen in greater numbers is that, with the reauthorization of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, some time ago, it was made legally possible for people with disabilities, physical and intellectual disabilities, to come to college. And the law enables them to have education through age 22. And as you know, high school ends at age 18. And so for a very long time, universities just weren't ready. They didn't have on their radar screen teaching people other than those that were really high functioning and the best and the brightest, as we've called them. And so now there are programs across the US that are designed to make this happen. And there is a program, a federally funded program at Boston College. And one of their outcomes of the program is that they have a database where they keep track of all the universities across the country who advertise their programs to serve this population. And so we looked at that database, got all of the names of the programs, investigated those programs as thoroughly as we could. And then we created a survey and surveyed academic librarians at all of those institutions and asked them about how it is that they're interacting with people with intellectual disabilities. And so we have been able to present about our findings with that at several different conferences. And we've also recently published an article about our findings. And so I'll have to tell you, that's been a huge shift for me. It's hard to imagine how college must change to serve people who aren't all really smart and really socially adjusted and really have their own goals well established and moving forward straight ahead with lots of potential there. So this is really a major change, and it's a major change that in our field we must pay some attention to. I'm just going to say one more thing, June, and I think you might be able to relate to this, but June and I had some of the same teachers in the master's program at Emporia State. we learned cataloging from Florence to Hart. We had foundations of information science, probably from Roger Greer, information transfer from Herbert Auckleitner. And I know I took at least one course in the PhD program from Brian O'Connor. And so I can remember, and Michael, maybe you'll be able to relate to this, but Brian too was really interested in organization of information. And one of the assignments that he gave to us was to create a visualization of how we could see information integrating many kinds and types of, well, I actually think he said knowledge integrating. And I thought carefully about that for days. And I remember that I all of a sudden thought, so how do you visualize this and it not just look all linear and flat? And so I took two styrofoam balls, both the same size, and I took quilting pins. And if you know, they're kind of long and they have a little knob on the end of them. And I poked those quilting pins in each ball as much as I could, so that it was round and thorough with those. And then I took those two balls and I caused them to turn together, so those pins went between each other, and but the balls could just keep moving. And so I conjured up a big tale about how the system would work if that was the way it was visualized. And you know what? That's been a really long time ago, and I still remember it. I still think about it. It's still causing me to think. And I think that's one of the places I'd like to sort of wrap this conversation, moving us on, June, is the idea of how important it is in our education that we learn, that we think, and we learn to think, and we make time to think carefully about many really important issues. So the time that you're spending thinking, the people who inspire you to think, that is a really important part of being educated at this level. And I just want to say, I hope you do it, and I hope you make lots of progress because of it. So that's it for me, June.
Thank you, Mira. You brought back a lot of memories for me also. Oh my goodness. I also studied with Jim Nice when he was there.
Yeah.
Marty Hale. I remember, oh my goodness. Oh, and I love what you said at the end there, is that, libraries used to be a place where you could think, right? They used to be characterized as this place where you could go, and especially academic libraries, you could go and just kind of lose yourself and think and have a quiet space. Not so much anymore. Especially if you ever come to OU, you can visit our Bazell Library, which is what you see behind me. And my office is over my left shoulder. Yes, over the left shoulder in the picture. The right shoulder in the picture, sorry. But we have a new Learning Commons that has a coffee shop for one thing, but then it has all these learning spaces for students spread out throughout. And then down on the lower level of that, we have rooms that students can book that are like glass enclosed rooms. Some of them have treadmills where you can stand up and study. And it's a fabulous learning space. So I hope someday you come to visit me. I'll take you down there so you can see it. But it's no longer this quiet place. And I am always lamenting to my husband and to colleagues that there is no time to think. There is no time to really think and reflect about what you're doing, what you're learning, and what you want to be doing. And, when you're talking with your students, it's an inspiring time because they're thinking, and then they make you think, and then you bring back thoughts of your own into that conversation. And that's what it should be. It should be a conversation with all parties having and sharing equally in that learning experience. So I'm going to have us take a quick break. How long do you want to break for, Mira?
Well, it's up to you, but usually just get up and stretch and move around a little bit. And usually people think about 10 minutes is good for that, but whatever
10
you
is
think.
good. 10 is good. So why don't we all come back at 11:15 and we'll continue.
Very
Okay.
good.
This as well. And I know that Moses and Sue Ann and Young Ah came in kind of at the same time. And they've moved ahead kind of at the same pace, except for Sue Ann, but Sue Ann has a different priority in her life right now. She does more full-time work than full-time student. So plus she also teaches for us. I think she put that in the chat. She's an adjunct for us during the summer and an invaluable adjunct. So it's really nice to have her teaching for us at the same time. So thank you all. We're all back. It's great to see everybody again. I'm going to share my screen again and bring us back to this PowerPoint. So I want to talk a little bit about my journey, and I'm not going to go in depth into it because you did all see my CV, or if you haven't, you know where it is, you can find it. But I want to talk more about how my life has shaped my academic journey, for better or worse. And I wanted to also explain this title. As I said, when we first planned this a couple of years ago, I had a completely different idea of what I wanted to talk about and how I would approach this. And it was also at a time when we had just started our doctoral program. So I had all these fresh ideas about, how this is going to work and everything, and how we were going to integrate it into our lives, etc. And then the world kind of changed for everybody, and nobody was expecting the pandemic and the far reach that it would have, and all the ways it would change our life, not just in academia, but in our personal lives. And we've gotten used to so many different things, like Zoom meetings from 9 in the morning until 5 in the afternoon, not the same one, thankfully, but continual meetings. We've gotten to share each other's family who come and join our meetings inadvertently, or our pets, or that are barking in the background, or our kitties strolling across the screen. So I mean, it's been a very interesting shift for us, right? And I think the world has learned a lot from it, but I think there's a lot more that we can still learn from this experience that I hope that you're all thinking about. And I'm sure as you grapple with the next stage of your life or the next day in your journey, that you consider what we have learned, what we've benefited from. It did cause us to pivot, a word that we hear all the time now, and cause us to really think about, to reprioritize our lives. What is it that we need to be doing and that we want to be doing and that we're not doing? And how can we shape our lives in a different way as a result of that? So when I chose this title, I started thinking, I'm going to leave it really basic, because right now, I think life is somewhat unscripted. We do have priorities in our lives. We do have plans in our lives. We do have jobs and responsibilities, but we're also, I think, a little unsettled and a little, I hope, open for change. So that's why I used Untitled, because I like to think that we're always making up our own titles as we go along, right? We're moving in the direction that we want to, or we might get shifted to another direction. And so we're constantly making up our own titles. And as I started putting this PowerPoint together, again, I think I told you I don't like using PowerPoints. I never can find a template that I like, and I spend way too much time trying to find one that really represents what I want to say, and I never do. So I got this idea of spirographs, and when I started using this template, these little icons on the screen look like spirographs. In fact, the one in the lower right is a spirograph image. And if you're not familiar with what a spirograph is, I do actually have one at home. You probably can't see this very well, but they're these little cogs that come together in a kit. And I have a really large adult spirograph kit here that has all these little pieces in it, right? And one thing that I think the pandemic provided us is a way to try to not just do work. Of course, I know for the first year, I spent probably every waking hour in front of this computer because I was here, I was home. And I started thinking, well, I have to do that. I have to get that done. I have to get that done. And I did not do a very good job of balancing my life and trying to figure out where my work ended and where my life started and how my day could be parceled out, because I wasn't used to being in my home office every single day. You know, I'd go to campus probably 3 days of the week. And then when I was home, I was working, but I was also tending to things around the house, right? But then one thing that the pandemic, I think in the second year, for me anyways, I took a step back and I said, we really need to restructure what's going on. And one thing I tried to build into my life was creative outlets. And I've noticed if you go online and you look for spirographs, you'll see that people are using spirographs as a creative outlet. They're designing these absolutely amazing art pieces using spirograph. And it's a technology that's been, or an art creative tool that's been around for decades. I used them as a little girl. I absolutely loved spirographs. And then I introduced them to my young men as they were going through their years. And so it's something that I think it represents part of my journey in the sense that it's moving back into things that I have lost or I've not spent time on, or that I've not allowed myself time for. And I'm going to explain that a little bit more as I talk to you more about what shaped my academic journey. Also, I want you to think about your reflection number 1, because we are going to come back to that. But you are welcome to put it into the chat if you like at this point, and we'll chat about those in a few minutes. But I do want you to think about what you wish you had known before you started your doctoral education, and then what kind of advice you might provide to newer doctoral students or to your younger self. And I'm going to stop sharing. Or no, actually, I'm not. I'm going to move forward. Maybe. Here we go. Okay, now I've never actually mapped out my journey before, so this is a little rough, but I did want to show you where I came from, where I ended up, and how I got there along the way. And I'm not going to go into everything. Obviously, we could spend a whole day doing that. I started in South Dakota. I actually grew up in the Black Hills of South Dakota in a very cold environment that sometimes we had snow 12 months of the year. When I met my husband, we moved to the eastern side of the state to Sioux Falls, South Dakota, which is where we both started our undergraduate journey. And I started my very first library job. And that's why I'm telling you this. As I was taking 18 credit hours a semester, which I know is not what you should be doing. And then also working part-time as a librarian at the local library. That's my first real taste of libraries. And being a librarian came into the picture. After a certain period of time, my husband graduated with his nursing degree. We moved to Victoria, Texas. As you can see, that straight line going almost straight south in Texas, which was a horribly hot, humid place compared to South Dakota. Took a lot of adjustment. I used to joke that I would get up in the morning and take a shower. By the time I got to work, I needed another one. It was that bad. But that was also another job in a library. I was the head of circulation as well as a backup computer operator. So I was developing additional skills along the way. In South Dakota, I was a reference clerk. So I learned the collection really quickly by reshelving our reference collection, but also answering reference questions. So again, I had the bug. I really wanted to be a librarian. So when we moved to Texas, I took on even more supervisory position and really enjoyed it. And then I also learned how to back up computers with these big washing machine sized drums. Some of you may remember that, which eventually moved to a refrigerator sized server environment. But that was my first experience with coding for computers. After that point, about 5 years later, we moved to New Mexico. We moved to Albuquerque, and we loved it there. And we moved there just because, there was no reason that we just loved the area, and my husband had an aunt there, so we moved to Albuquerque. It's where my first son was born, and he had cognitive disabilities and speech delays. And I'm telling you that because it really figures into my story, the story of my life. After Clifford was born, we moved to Kansas because Kansas was one of the best places in the nation for school districts for children with special needs. And we made that choice because of my son's disabilities, but also because there was a library school there and I could finally go back and get my master's. I'd worked all this time as a librarian without actually having a master's. And so I did. I came to ESU, and as Mira said, we had some of the very similar professors in the master's program. I remember walking into Jim Nice's classroom, and the first thing he said to everybody is, "I don't give A's." I'll never forget that. Well, he does now. So I have to say that because I was the first A he told me that he'd ever given, and I don't know what he's done after that, but he inspired me, and he inspired me to learn, and he inspired me to grow and to push myself further. I don't know if Jim is still there. I don't think so, but he was somebody that was a bit of a curmudgeon, and students didn't always like him, but I learned so much from him, not just about being a student, not just about information library science. I learned about life. I learned about pushing myself and having goals and doing things that people said you couldn't do, that you did. After I graduated with my master's, Brian O'Connor was a really big influence in my life. I was a GA for him as a master's student. And Brian said he was moving to UNT in Texas, in Denton, Texas. And I said, can I come too? So I applied to the doctorate program there, and I went there for my doctorate. And it was an interdisciplinary doctoral program. So I was introduced more and more to information science, and I realized that this was really my passion. And libraries will always be my passion, and I still continue to teach and to do my research within libraries. But I'm also really information science based in that regard. And I finished my doctorate degree in 2.5 years. I do not recommend that to anybody, but I had goals in mind. While I was in Kansas, I had my second son who also had disabilities. And again, they did genetic screening and studies and told me you shouldn't have any more children after I had Clifford. But Ben came along, and I'm so happy to have him. So when we moved to Texas, I had 2 children. As I was going through my doctorate, I remember writing my dissertation with Ben at home with me, Clifford in middle school, and people telling me, "You're crazy, you can't get all this done." But I had goals, my family had goals, and so that's what we did. We made it happen. My husband is a registered nurse, gives us the flexibility to move around. He actually worked nights for almost 30 some years so that we could juggle schedules. That's something I'm sure all of you have to do and make considerations in your life. And with children with disabilities, it even adds another dimension to that, right? Where you have to think of them first and think of other things second. And unfortunately, that is when I put my career kind of on the back burner. I finished the degree. We moved to Buffalo, New York as my first academic position, but I had to start making choices that allowed me to balance my family life a little bit more. And what that meant is I didn't travel to conferences as much as possible because I couldn't leave my children with just anybody, and we weren't around extended family. I may not take opportunities collaborating with people across the world or across the United States because I couldn't travel as much. So you make choices, right? You do these things because of all of the influences in your life and in your world. However, as you can tell, I'm a workaholic. I work a lot. I have a lot of goals for myself. I became involved in the ACES Association, the Association for Information Science and Technology, back when I was a doctor, or actually when I was a master's student. And I've been hooked ever since. And I've held multiple leadership positions. I've done everything except be president, which I'm not sure if I'm going to go for or not, but it's really shaped my world. It has built my network. It is where I met some of my long-term collaborators and very good friends from all over the world. And those people that continue to influence you as doctoral students and continue to influence me are part of that. I remember one of my best experiences at ACES is when I walked up to Michael Buckland and introduced myself. You know, this is where you can talk to the people you've been reading for years. And he was so gracious, and he's now a really good colleague. So as you can see from this map, I've had this kind of interesting pathway. In Buffalo, I got tenure, and Buffalo is very cold, a lot like South Dakota, but we had lived in the South and Midwest areas for so long that my husband said, can we please move somewhere north or somewhere south and warm? And when I got the offer at Oklahoma, we jumped at it. We wanted to be closer to our friends and family in Texas, but I also was really interested in the SLIS program and the opportunities it might afford me. So in a nutshell, that's me. I'm going to leave it there. And if you have questions for me, I'm more than happy to chat more about that. But I've never actually mapped this out. So it looks kind of like I've got almost an arrow going here, doesn't it? Interesting to think about that. Sorry, I'm going to go back here. Now, I had asked you to think about some reflections as part of our symposium today, and I'm just checking the time. Because I think I can learn a lot from you as doctoral students, as faculty in another program. And I really would love to hear, if anybody wants to share, your reflection on this first question. I'm going to pull up the chat. No one's going to share.
So it's not about me, but even in Korean systems, but here too, the programs assume students, novice students, know everything already. So maybe mismatched, but the students, potential students, are naive. They don't know. They don't know even what the research question is. They have probably a small or big aspiration only, inspiration only. Maybe that big field or futuristic kind of goal, not knowing kind of very incremental contribution to the existing literature. That's the kind of output of dissertation, basically, in reality. So some students may have kind of, okay, back to my kind of, changing the libraries thing, but that's not a scholarly. But as a doctoral program, what is your goal? I mean, I changed the world with this kind of great invention or great discovery. That's not going to happen in 99%, 999%. No. So how can we, as educator, kind of inform the prospect doctoral students kind of reality? And also, you may say, oh, the job placement is not my concern. It's about academic, it's about scholarly works, but in many cases, they have to have a job. It's all, the chronicles higher ed always kind of debate, okay, like English department, all the PhD in English, there's no job basically. So how can we communicate with potential students, but also they may not know the possibilities, other possibilities, not only on the academic side, but also industry side or government side. There are many possibilities too. So I wish I had known those opportunities before I jump on the doctoral program. And in many countries, particularly East Asian countries, it's kind of step. You have undergraduate and the masters, and then the doctoral level, and then you are supposed to be a professor. But that's not probably not for everybody. So again, I haven't been thinking this a lot, for years. I didn't know, actually. I didn't know what would be my dissertation topic. It just came to me, and I kind of took a geography class for somehow, at the doctoral level. I mean, the class is actually suggested by my the dissertation supervisor, but until then, I didn't have any idea. So I don't know what you think.
Well, I think, that's why we designed the program to have students take courses outside of SLIS, because we want them to be introduced to other disciplines, ways of doing research, or if it's a part of their area of specialization, it'll help them formulate their dissertation ideas better. I certainly could not teach educational policy, and that's something that Moses was very interested in. So he sought out courses as well as faculty members in that department that would allow him to learn what he wanted so he could focus in the area he wanted. But I'm seeing some great chat. One thing that Juliana mentioned is that, here we go. Even though they told us the amount of time you need to dedicate, it is a lot. Advice: set aside dedicated time to write, read, learn. For me, that's Sundays. So at SLIS, we have doctoral students take 8 hours of seminar credits, and one is research, one is scholarly writing, one is pedagogy, and the other is dissertation preparation. So in the writing seminar, we talk a lot about forming writing groups or joining writing groups for doctoral students as a way to gain that additional support, especially during the pandemic. They were popping up everywhere. There's some really great ones. Pre-pandemic, there are writing camps or writing places, groups that would get together, excuse me, not just at OU, but all over. And that was one way to kind of help give you that dedicated time to write and to think and to participate with other individuals. So, that would be some advice I would give to people too, is to look for those. But Juliana, you're absolutely right. The time that you need to dedicate to study and to thinking and to talking with other people, and that's all part of the learning experience. And that's great advice. So Sue-Ann said the first class in the doctoral program was full of theoretical topics. My brain was not prepared. Having some content ahead of the first day of classes might help ease into those heavy topics and scholarly works. It's excellent advice. Excellent advice. Are you listening, faculty? I think that you're right. When you're working as a practitioner, you're working anywhere really, and you go into a doctoral program for the first time, your brain really does have to start re-engaging, right? And depending upon what your profession was prior to the doctorate or your preparation for that, you're certainly going to have to find ways to retrain your brain or how you approach your learning experience. And Juliana's comment speaks to that as well, finding time. I'm going to talk a little bit later about balancing. So these are great. I would suggest to myself to take more courses about research and writing. totally agree. I think, you know, you all that are now defending your dissertations are probably thinking, I made it, I did it. I did my first independent research project, but thinking back a year or even a year and a half or so, did you know where to start, right? How did you feel? You must have felt a little unsettled about how do I actually start this project? I mean, when you write your proposal, yes, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this. But do you think about all those little things in between? Like if you're going to do a survey, how do you prepare your instruments for IRB, right? What do you have to include in that IRB application the first time that you do your IRB? You know, you have to have your recruitment flyers, you have to have your scripts, you have to have all those documents that you never even thought about, right? When you're setting up your first research project. So I think that's really good advice. Terrific advice in Moses in my first course with Dr. White. Start thinking about your dissertation topic now, and for each course, use that subject for projects and research papers to build your knowledge. Did you find yourself doing that as well? No. I think it's really good advice though, but as we all know, things change, right? We oftentimes best made plans. Okay, so let's move on. Get my slide to move. What I wanted to also talk about today, hold on a minute, sorry. Even though I use Zoom all the time, I'm always struggling with sharing screen. Here we go. One thing I wanted to talk to you all a little bit today is how you feel or how you think recent events such as the pandemic and the sudden shift to alternate modes of learning, and now the terrible war in the Ukraine and how unsettled we're all feeling, how this has affected you and how it will continue to affect academia. Because those of you that are going to move into faculty positions or are already in positions in, say, academic libraries like Juliana, or in positions where you are going to be responsible for somebody else's learning, I think this is a very unsettling time, not just for students, but also for the faculty. I've posted at the bottom here an article that just came out a couple of days ago in the Chronicle of Higher Education by Beth McMurdy, called "The Stunning Level of Student Disconnection. Professors are reporting record numbers of students checked out, stressed out, and unsure of their future." And I hope we're going to see more and more studies, and so we can gain a better understanding about how today's world is really affecting our students at all levels. You know, a lot of the literature I've read prior to the pandemic was related to digital youth and how youth learn and how we need to adapt the university environment to better engage with our students. You know, how can we integrate digital technologies in better ways, because our undergrads are on social media 24/7, and that's how they want to learn, which is not necessarily the case, right? Not all students are tech savvy, and not all students want to be on the computer all the time. And when the pandemic hit and we shifted in a week's time, it seems for most of us faculty, right, to complete online learning, whether in Zoom or at OU, we've been in Canvas forever. So for us as faculty members and for our master students, it wasn't that much of a shift because we'd already been teaching asynchronously using Canvas. But for our doctoral students, we started teaching on Zoom. So for us, it wasn't as bad as colleagues in other departments and colleges, because they were not teaching online. And all of a sudden they had a week over their spring break to go online. Now we're finding out in the research, and this article is a really great example of that. And I'll put another one in the chat for you that comes out of this article. is finding out that students are really disengaged. Students that were forced to be in Zoom classes and took all their classes online and were forced to stay in their dorm rooms, forced to not engage with their friends, you know, how our world changed. We were all socially isolated, really didn't like the Zoom experience, right? And it has caused so many problems for them, stress-wise, learning-wise, etc. But I won't go into all the details of that article and issue due to time, but I hope you'll take a look at it because it really is eye-opening. And it's not just from the student's perspective, but also from the faculty's perspective, because faculty are probably all feeling the same way, right? They're struggling to engage the students. Students probably learned some, I want to say, bad habits when we were all on Zoom, because if you had a really large class, in the case of undergraduates, or even with master's students, you turned off your cameras to save bandwidth so that everybody could still be in class at the same time, right? And so students got in the habit of being in class and listening, and probably the professor's camera was on, but then all the others were not. So you weren't truly engaging, right? And faculty really needed to work on ways to make that experience more meaningful for students. And for those of them that have never taught online up to that point, it was a real struggle. Now here at OU, I think they did an amazing job of providing resources to the faculty. We have a Center for Teaching Excellence, but we also have another group on campus that is responsible for online teaching. And so they immediately started supplying faculty with headsets, with computers, if they didn't have a computer at home, with document cameras so they could scan things and show them on the screen. And also all kinds of training and support so that they could be effective teachers. Now, again, the research is not there yet. So we don't know if that was effective for teachers. We don't know how it affected students. But what we are seeing so far is that students started, you know, their brains stopped engaging, right? What we're seeing now, according to this recent study, is that students are not engaged in their courses. They're not coming to class. They think that if the lecture's being taped, they can just watch it later, but they don't, and then do the work, which is affecting their expectations about education, what education is providing them. But it's also affecting how they learn, right? And how we want to teach. And I know there are exemplary teachers at ESU and also at OU that are reaching out to their students, that are holding their hands, that are learning what they need so that they can better engage them in their classes. But that's not all teachers, right? And it's really difficult to know. Another hat that we've been wearing, and I'm sure you'll all agree with me, both as students, but also as faculty members, is that of counselor, right? We're needing to be very aware of our students and their progress. We're checking in constantly, which we should be doing, to make sure that they're not falling behind, that they're not being disengaged, that they don't have all these other stresses in their lives that are pulling them away from their educational experience. You know, people have had their family members ill during COVID or unfortunately pass away during COVID. They've had children at home, mothers teaching, you know, being the teacher as well as the mother, as well as trying to work in their job. Their fathers in the same way. And so all these roles have been shifting. And so our students have all these additional stressors during COVID, and it's still, you know, it's still prevalent in some areas. So as faculty, we're now counselors as well. Not that we didn't already serve that role to a certain extent, but we're also now having to really monitor student messages and to think about what are they telling us or what are they not telling us, and reaching out to them in ways that we're allowed to, right? Because there's always that division between faculty and student and what you can and can't do. or how involved you can become in their lives. And it's a little different for doctoral students than it is for undergrad and master's students, but because you are their advisor and you work so closely together. But then there are, our master's students that are crying out for help. You can see it when they stop attending or signing online, when their assignments are late and things like that. So their lives are pulling them away from that learning experience. So I'm not saying this all to be gloom and doom, but I'm saying this as a lesson to us to learn more about what's going on in the world right now and how it affects academia, how it will affect you as a faculty member or a future faculty member. I'm sure Liz is seeing it in her school libraries. I'm sure she's seeing it interacting with teachers and with the students. I'm sure Juliana's seeing it with undergrads and grads in her library. And I'm sure our faculty are all encountering it. I guess the lesson we can take away from this is that this is a time for us to rethink a lot of things. As I mentioned earlier, this is a time for us to reevaluate how we teach, right? No longer are we going to put up a lecture and hope our students engage. No longer are we going to put up a PowerPoint with voiceover that's an hour long and hope our students are listening to the whole thing. And I'm really guilty of that. When I teach information organization and technology tech courses, it's hard to chunk them, right? But it helps us and it gives us this opportunity to really rethink how we're doing things, but how we can engage our students. So I'm going to stop with that there and move on to something else. But are there any thoughts or comments before we move ahead? I'm just being very mindful of our time.
June, I wonder if I might just mention a thing or two.
Absolutely.
I agree, and I'm so familiar with all the things you've been saying. It causes me, though, to say to a group of future leaders in our profession and people with the credentials, not only the knowledge and the know-how, but also the credentials, and with that comes responsibility. And it is a wonderful place that you're headed to. And seeing the world, seeing this new world as an opportunity for your leadership is one of the best hopes, I think, that we should have for ourselves and for our collective group of people in this world. You have a great opportunity to bring the optimism and know-how to this troubled environment. And I talk to myself every day as I think about what my work is and how important it is for me to bring a message that gives people a sense that we know something about what some of the problems in society are, and that our purpose is to improve quality of life and to solve human problems. I mean, when you read the Rubin textbook about foundations of information, library and information science, that's a solid message that runs all through that big book. And so I'm just hoping that while you hear about all of these challenges and what appears to be students that are disillusioned, I just hope that you stay optimistic and that you become that voice of authority that can help us as a country to keep moving forward and as a world. And I believe that you're going to be perfectly situated to do that.
That is such a lovely message, lovely message. So one thing I also want to discuss, and what I start my day every day with the news, because that's my habit, right? I want to know what's going on in the world. I still watch television right away in the morning. But I also start with saying two things that I'm grateful for every day. and really thinking, taking some time for myself, taking that self-care that's become so important for us during this time. But just reaffirming for myself what I'm grateful for and the difference that I can make that day. And I think that's something that everybody can do. I came across this really great article, and it actually was published in 2014. And I think I put the URL down here at the bottom, but it's all about imbalance, right? And I love this picture. Actually, no, that article is not here. Or is it? Yes, it is. So we're juggling so many different things, right? Is our life about work-life balance anymore? Really, is it attainable? Is that a goal we set for ourselves that maybe we're making it too hard for ourselves? So this article talks all about imbalance, right? How your life can be imbalanced, but also positive. And I think that's something we should all strive for, because I don't know if we're ever going to have a perfect balance, right? You're being too hard on yourselves if you think that you can balance life and work. And as a doctoral student, again, going back to Juliana's comment about time commitment and the amount of time that things take, or how to integrate various parts of your life together, it's important that you give yourself kudos for everything that you do, but that also you realize that balance isn't always achievable, and that's okay. But also think about balance as being transitory, or imbalance, excuse me, as being transitory, because things are going to shift. Sometimes it's in balance and other times it's not, and it'll go back and forth forever. And I think this image really demonstrates that for me, because we're always juggling so much, right? One of the opportunities that I've taken very recently is to become the editor of Library and Information Science Research. We're going to come back to that one in just a second. But I wanted to do this maybe for selfish reasons, but also for professional reasons. But I became the editor, goodness, this is the beginning of my second 3-year contract. So I've been the editor of LASR for 3 years, and it's been really life-altering because, well, for many, many reasons. But it's another thing I have to balance in my life, right? I balance a full-time faculty job. I balance in that job, I balance my teaching, research, and service. I am very fortunate to have a dean of our college that supports my efforts as an editor by giving me one course buyout, buying me out of one course in one semester, and then allowing me to buy out of the second course with my stipend from LASR. So I teach a 1-1 teaching load, okay? Which is, you know, in a research institute like OU, your typical teaching load is 2-2 in our field, where it might be different in other institutions, and it might be different within different departments within your institution even. So I made the decision to do this. It was an opportunity I couldn't pass up. But I made the decision a couple of years before I actually started it, when I was approached by the editor, longtime editor, Candy Schwartz, to see if I was interested in this, so she could start succession planning and we could start working together, because she knew she was going to retire from her editorship. So I decided a few years before I even started that yes, I would do this. But in the meantime, my life shifted. It shifted a lot, and I actually reconsidered not taking the editorship because my children are getting older. They're now 26 and 31 years old. They're no longer in school all day. And now I have their lives to manage as well. That's one of those other things I have to balance. We started our doctoral program. Again, another thing I wasn't expecting when I signed on to do the editorship. And so you make a lot of choices, and you do balance a lot of things, and things do get out of whack and they're unbalanced, but that's okay. But I'm really happy I made that choice, because it has allowed me to shape our field. It has allowed me to learn more about what other people are doing in their research, and to also learn to be a better writer and editor, because I do the copy editing, a lot of the copy editing for the journal articles as they go through. But it's also strengthened my network. as I reach out to people to become reviewers for the articles that are submitted, or I work with the authors to make their articles better through the reviews they get, but also the copy editing. We're an international journal, and so I have a lot of non-English speaking writers, which can be a struggle to work with. But by the time their article is published, it's so much improved through their experience with me as an editor, but also the reviewers that are so gracious to give their time. I highly recommend that you become reviewers. I'm just going to put a plug out there because it's so difficult to find reviewers, but it is the best way to learn how to be a better writer, right? Because you are thinking and critiquing other people's research efforts, right? It also improves your research understanding because you are thinking deeply about how they did this research, why they did this research, what it contributes to our body of knowledge, but also what are the things they could have done or should have done better, or that they could write about better, that they could explain better. And so it's a wonderful way for you to contribute to the field, but also to improve your own skills in research and writing. So if I'm tapping on your window sometime or on your Zoom door, it's because I need you as a reviewer. In one of in the writing seminar, I actually have students think of themselves as reviewers and actually critique existing articles as a way to learn more about writing, but also the editorial and the research process. So you get to learn about the whole peer review process at the same time because you're part of it, right? When you put an article out there, you're just not submitting it and it goes into the air somewhere. There's an editor behind it that says, okay, I'm going to take this, we're going to give you feedback and help you make it better before we send it to reviewers. And then I'm going to find people that can assess it fairly. And then you have the opportunity to revise. But it's a very sometimes lengthy process. But when you start doing your first publications, keep in mind that there are a lot of people behind that submission, a lot of moving parts that have to fall into place. Anyway, that said, I took that opportunity and I have learned so much from it that I never once regretted taking it. And I hope you think about those opportunities as they come along. Another opportunity I'm now juggling is I am the interim director of what's called the Data Scholarship Program here at OU in the college, Dodge Family College of Arts and Sciences. We just renamed our college, which is a program that has primarily certificates, graduate and undergraduate certificates in data analytics and applied statistics, but also minors for undergraduates in both of those areas. And I am the interim director as I helped to build that program over the last few years. We are now getting ready to launch in a year an online data analytics program, which is not a we're going to launch a applied statistics program online. Get my programs right here, which will be an adult learners program. It'll be a master's program, and it's designed to integrate ethics and professionalism into the program as well, rather than from an academic perspective that you come away with this advanced math degree. What do you do with it, right? So I've been thrilled to be part of that experience, and I've learned a lot about being a director, and I've learned a lot about some of the skills you need to move into those supervisory positions. I don't know if I'm going to continue to be a director or to think of other director opportunities, but I am going to stick with this for another few years and see where it goes. So again, there's another opportunity I was not thinking about as I moved into my, into reevaluating my life. I have to share this image with you because it's one that I've shared with my students in the past. And this is an idea of best made plans and where they go awry. This is actually a picture of my above ground swimming pool and my dog Hunter that you see in the foreground there. I was working at home during the pandemic in this very office, and looking out the window, I heard this terrible noise, and I thought, what in the world? Our pool just imploded. It just, one side collapsed. It was probably, how long have we been in this house? It was probably 15 or 16 years old, because it predated us living here. We've been in, we'll be in Norman for 14 years in August. But it just imploded. And it's like, who would ever plan for this, right? Just, it was amazing. I went outside and I thought, what in the world? And I'm sharing this with you because I want you to make room for best made plans going awry, because they don't always work out the way you plan, right? You may think you're going to go in this direction, and yet something pulls you in another direction. And that I want you to keep open. I know I mentioned that earlier, but be open for opportunities, because you never know when they're going to come. You might get off this call today and somebody will call and say, hey, do you want to collaborate? I love your research topic and I want to learn more. You just never know. Get involved in professional associations. Liz is getting an award later this week, right, for her work in professional associations, and she can chat about that if she likes in the chat, because I won't get the title right. But open yourself up to opportunities. The only way you're going to do that is by reaching out and getting involved in different things, right? And present your research, present your ideas, engage with people. But I had to share that image. But we're going to back up here. We have, goodness, we have about 20 more minutes of our time together here. But I'd like you to think about reflection number 2 now, and to put a message in the chat. What is one thing that you want to know about faculty life that you are uncertain or concerned about? We'll just take a minute. And I invite the other faculty on the call to also answer this question. One thing I try to do in the seminar when I teach it is to involve the students more and more in my life. Help them understand what it is like to be a faculty member, what are the expectations are of faculty members in regards to teaching, research, and service. And of course, it will vary from university to university, as I mentioned earlier, or for even within program to program at your university. But they're all very important dimensions of your life as a faculty member that prepare you for different positions that you weren't expecting, or that you really didn't think you were qualified for, or even interested in. So is anybody chatting? It didn't pop up. Yay, Liz. So nobody has any questions about faculty life. The future of tenure and promotion, that is an excellent, excellent question. And Jenny, you just went through tenure and promotion not too recently. So boy, I bet you can tell stories. And I'm not asking to air dirty laundry, but I think it's a really great question because of everything that's happened in the last few years and the alternate ways of learning, the alternate ways of producing and publishing. What will tenure and promotion include coming forward? And will it continue to be as central? Mary, do you want to talk about that?
Did you say me?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, I think it's really important for those of us in the academy to know that that tenure and promotion is being called into question by people throughout society, in particular legislators and lawmakers. And there is a very conservative trend across the country that wants to do away with tenure and promotion. And in a nutshell, I think that one of the things that they hope to do is to reduce the power, if you will, of tenured faculty to teach what they think is important to teach in lieu of lawmakers or others dictating what it is that should be taught in at least in public schools at all levels. Now, there's other ways of talking about this debate, but I think that this is one of the most compelling right now. It's a major threat, and those of you who aren't in academics yet, I think you should keep your ear to the ground. You must know that this is going on, and you must learn as much as you can, not to dread the tenure and promotion process, but to look for institutions where it's fairly and equitably and reasonably done, and for the good of the cause, for the good of encouraging your own progress and enabling you to achieve a place of capacity to be able to take the responsibility at a high level for the teaching and learning of other people.
I think it's a really important set of points to make. And every university has all these external factors, right? Or internal factors that are at play. We have a brand new provost at OU, and he is already starting to change our hiring process, how it has been done under the previous provost. And I imagine tenure and promotion will be the next thing on his agenda, which should be. I mean, you should always be reevaluating and evaluating your existing programs and how things work. So I look forward to that happening.
I also think it's important for us to know about and to pay attention to the fact that as budgets are cut, so are lines in the state budget for education, and tenure track positions are typically a line in the state budget. And the trend now is to reduce the number of lines that there are, which leaves academic programs being taught primarily by adjunct professors. And I don't say this to disparage the idea of adjunct professors in the least. We need them and want them, but it makes us think about what will it mean again to the future of the academy and our role in society.
Well, that's a wonderful point. Just on the news this morning, one of our community colleges, actually it's not entirely community college, University of Southern Oklahoma, the students are protesting because they are projecting cutting 40 lines. They lost billions of dollars because of enrollment being 17.5% lower during the pandemic, or actually even before then it was starting to lower. And that's one of the difficult decisions they've been making, is where do we cut? And faculty lines are expensive in some cases, and they are starting to look very critically at where they can cut. So the students were protesting. It was the first I've heard of it. It was on the news here this morning, and I'll continue to watch that. But it's a really important conversation. There's some conversation going on in the chat as well, that there's something going on at Texas A&M. Yeah, about the library's restructuring due to external forces and the faculty status of librarians being at stake. That's really interesting as well. And then Ting has posted something about, I feel very unconfident about teaching, especially teaching in synchronous Zoom session or face-to-face setting. I'm always afraid I said something inappropriate or wrong to mislead others. Do you have any suggestions? It's a really good question. It's something that I grapple with as an instructor, especially in today's climate. we've had some incidences here at OU where faculty members were called out by students for saying the N-word, but in context of literature that they were reading in class, but students took it the wrong way. And so that faculty member was investigated by the university. And I don't think there's been a resolution, but they're still here on the faculty. But you're absolutely right. There are so many, everybody has their opinion, right? We're all entitled to our opinions, but in our field, we know the dangers of misinformation. We know how information can spread that can jeopardize lives, that can jeopardize careers. And it is not an easy situation. Do I have any suggestions? Yeah, that's a really, really great question. I really think very deliberately about everything that I say, and I post to students in discussion boards. I think very deliberately when I write emails to students, and I think you should anyways, but I think even more now than other times. But also, I think treating my students like adults, the adults that they are, and recognizing that they have maybe different lifestyles or different opinions than I do, and encouraging those opinions, because I think we can learn from each other so much. Moses is coming from a foreign country that I know absolutely nothing about, and I learn something new every time I talk to him. So I think bringing students into that conversation is really, really important, but also you have to be very deliberate. Does anybody else want to contribute? Mary, you have you're unmuted.
I didn't mean to be. So, sorry.
Okay.
I think I just unmute myself here because as a junior faculty member, I would say my primary goal and concern when teaching via Zoom is to try and build a learning community, first and foremost. And that at times, for me at least, even trumps the teaching of the content per se. So this community of trust where students would feel free enough to speak their mind and offer this diversity of perspectives and opinions. And one very helpful tool that a number of us here at SLIM use is so-called discussion circles, where we give students enough of an autonomy to talk about issues amongst themselves. And what I find helpful is not exactly a constant oversight as we tend to do as faculty members, but sort of an equal partner in this conversation. So I am providing those opportunities for students to ask questions and also welcome me into their discussion circle. So I've participated in a number of these conversations, and I can just tell you that the communication flows so much more freely when students don't feel this constant pressure or fear of saying something wrong. So I feel it's very, very important to provide these opportunities and not always be concerned about performance or doing something just for the sake of getting the grades or getting certain points for participation. So that's my just 2 cents in this.
I think they're wonderful 2 cents, and I bet you could tell us a lot more. It is that community of trust, and building that community of trust is really difficult to do, but it's something that I think we all strive for as faculty members. And Juliana put up a really nice comment back to Ting about, being vulnerable with her students, making them feel free to be vulnerable with her as well. And Juliana, you can certainly jump in here if I'm not characterizing your chat correctly. One thing I am very free about in my courses is, like I said, telling the students about my life as a faculty member and the different pressures that I have and what I've done that day. I've been in 5 meetings today, and I'm sure they get tired of hearing me, but it's important for you to realize if you are going in that, in that track for you with your life, that you feel that you understand what you're getting into, right? Which is why we developed the seminar in the first place, is because the faculty all felt that these were areas they were ill prepared for when they took their first faculty position. And we wanted our doctoral students to not feel the same way. But I'm very open. They probably know more about me and my family and my dogs than most of the other faculty. But I do think we build a community of trust that way. I'm just scrolling down. Somebody has posted something about what's included in their syllabus. Yes, Sue-Ann. Everyone's allowed to feel they can work and learn in a safe and caring environment. Everyone learns about, understands, appreciates, and respects varied races, classes, genders, physical and mental abilities, and sexualities. Everyone matters. I completely agree with this. And you put this into your syllabus, which is really important. Now, if students would read the syllabus, that'd be great. I'm kidding. So this is wonderful conversation. Would you recommend having an adjunct faculty position in different institutions at the same time? That's a great question.
I don't see anything wrong with that. In fact, I think it might actually be a benefit, especially if you were lucky enough to, employ a graduate faculty or an adjunct faculty member with some real expertise that's kind of rare and wonderful. I mean, I think good teachers learn from their students, and learning from students in more than one institution just seems like a good idea to me.
So one thing I would also recommend as you look at adjunct faculty positions is how involved the adjunct faculty are in decisions and decision-making. Some universities do a really good job of having their adjunct faculty as part of their faculty meetings. OU does not. We're not very good at that. I know at Buffalo, we did invite our adjunct faculty to serve on, to come to our faculty meetings or to have conversations with them. What we do, I think, a good job at OU is, in NSLIS, is to reach out to our faculty and help them, let them know that they can ask questions at any time, and to work with them when they're developing their course shells or their syllabi or their assignments, so that they don't feel that they're alone. Even though they're probably teaching with somebody else's syllabi, you have the opportunity to customize it, make it your own to a certain extent, but you have faculty there to help and support you. But I know that went a little bit off your question, Moses, but I do think that's another important factor, is to look at how involved you can actually be as a faculty member. Elise does have, do they still have that birds of the feather where adjunct faculty, if they attend Elise can come and talk to each other?
I don't know about
their
it.
experiences?
I don't think so now, but I could be wrong.
They used to. So that might be something to look for also, is ways that you can engage other adjunct faculty and learn about their experience. Because that may be a path that you take for a while, maybe a path that you really enjoy, that you do that in addition to your current position or another opportunity that comes along.
And I think I could be wrong about this, but I think that the generation that many of you are in, there's going to be fewer people that very good people, excellent people that will just say, I'm not going to put myself through that. I'm not going to do that tenure track thing. That's just too intrusive for me. And instead, they deliberately become really good at being adjunct teachers. And I foresee a new name for that role. I mean, there's so many around the country, such a common thing now. I think that there needs to be a new terminology for that particular position, with a new positive connotation that can march on.
Absolutely. And, one thing I really love about the dean of our college is he is a real advocate for adjuncts and making sure that they have fair working environments, and also renewable term faculty members, another term you might or might not be familiar with. Those are non-tenure track in some instances, depending on your university, of course, who teach a really high load, but they don't have to contribute to research, and in some cases, not even to service. So that's another potential opportunity. But our dean is very, very cognizant of making sure that they're treated fairly, that they're paid fairly, adjuncts and renewable term. And our new provost is also starting, we are all being required to develop guidelines for evaluating our tenure, our renewable term faculty and our adjuncts. So it's another area. I agree. It's probably going to be a new
phenomenon.
A new phenomena in education. I think it's great. I actually thought about it sometimes myself as I'm balancing and imbalancing my life. So I know we're running out of time, but I just want to end here with something I say to my students all the time, and they're probably tired of hearing it. I always have them post in our seminar something that inspired them that week. And depending on how many students are in the seminars, 2 will post one week, the others might post the next week, etc. But it doesn't have to be related to your research. It can be anything that inspires you. So every day I'm looking for things to inspire me. And you would be surprised how much you can learn about yourself and your research just by looking for those inspirations. And the ones that students bring to class are just amazing, whether it's a new tool that they learned or a new database they tried or an article they found on, artificial intelligence or, whatever. It's so much fun. And we share them together in class, and we also talk about how it affects us and how it inspires us. And that's something that I think they enjoy. I hope so. Sue-Ann and Moses and Ju and Young Ah can all speak to that. Of course, they're going to say yes. But one thing I also really say, and I hope you all take this to heart, is what's really important as a scholar, whether you go into academia or you decide to become an editor or you continue, in your line of work that you're currently in, keep learning, right? We're always learning. And to read widely, read outside of your discipline, read anything that comes across your table that inspires you, that's interesting to you, and to think deeply. I'm going to actually get a t-shirt made that says read widely and think deeply, because it's so important. And this goes back to what somebody said in the beginning, that we don't have time to think, we don't have time to really engage with what we're learning in the world every day, and what we are personally learning on our own or in our classrooms, or what we're trying to help our students learn. So read widely. As a doctoral student, it's so important to not just stick to your own field, because LAS is so interdisciplinary that you might be bringing in things from education or from cognitive science or from computer science or biology. And Dr. Dow's experience with her doctoral degree is great, a testament to that, in terms of how you mesh all these things together to help you grow as an individual, help you grow as a scholar. So read widely, think deeply. I'm going to end there. I think we're at the end of our time, but I'm happy to stick around if anybody has additional conversation or questions.
Well, Dean Chung, would you like to wind us up here?
Well, thank you so much for your time. And this is very, again, inspirational to many of us. And I would like to add a little thing from that, the read widely, think deeply also. I intentionally created classes that are called the Reader's Advisory. series of 1 credit hour here and also in Milwaukee, because I realized that read widely, even novels or nonfictions in any subjects helps you think. And also I'd like to enforce myself think by reading those books with students. That was my intentional kind of effort in that the same context. So think about that seriously. You will get that point in the future, I bet. So again, thank you everybody, for your time and efforts to get engaged. That's not easy. Look, I mean, we have other doctoral students. They may have other the businesses. They don't have that motivation, I would say, enough, the bigger motivation to be here over those other commitments. But you are here, and I really appreciate your commitment. Again, thank you very much, Dr. Abbas. That has been very helpful.
Thank you for having me and coming and sharing a conversation with me on Saturday. It was so wonderful to meet you all, to hear about your research, and to hear some of the challenges and opportunities that you're anticipating, and your questions. I mean, it helps me, it helps your professors, and it helps you, I hope, to really think about these issues. But keep in touch. I would love to hear how your work is going, and I really look forward to reading about your studies and maybe publishing some of them in LASR, and engaging with you in other scholarly ways in the future.
So there was a, do you remember there was a doctoral student conference called Connection in late 90s and early 20s, and then I was in Toronto, I think. That was kind of upper kind of New York, Toronto, that area. They started, and then and then kind of disappeared in several years. So I think kind of Midwest, Connection conference here, that would be worth to explore.
Mm-hmm. We could absolutely have our own contingent. Just our school in Missouri, maybe a Midwestern conference for our doctoral students to all get together. I wish we could have been in person. It would have been so much more meaningful, but
yes,
we're used to Zoom. We're getting better at it every day.
Well, I think we're pretty good at it, quite frankly, and I'm very glad that we've had it over this period of time that we've just come through. It would have been much worse without it, that's for sure. I think we've done amazingly well with it.
Absolutely.
Well, everyone, I think we're finished for today, right? Finished for today, but moving on with lots of things in our life. And so everyone take care, stay safe, and let's stay in touch.
And I'll be thinking of those of you who are going to defend soon. Exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Send you positive vibes.